It is that time of the year again where I get to read the Waterstones prize winners from the previous year. So for 2023 we have got the book of the year, which is Catherine Rundell's Impossible Creatures, and then for the novel of the year we have Alice Wynn's In Memoriam. I'm going to be reading both of these books spoiler free in this vlog. I did do this last year as well. If you want to check that out, I was reading Lessons in Chemistry and Skandar and the Unicorn Thief. I will leave that linked above. I think that one was spoiler free as well. I'm sure I'll tell you in the vlog. But anyway, I thought I would do it again because I had a fun time doing it, and these have been sat on my shelves for a couple of weeks now, waiting for me to read them. It is time. So, the book of the year, Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundell. This is a middle grade fantasy following a young boy who discovers, when staying with his granddad, that there's this series of islands that nobody knows exists, and it's called the Archipelago. It's a space in which mythical creatures really exist alongside humans, and nobody knows about this island area. At the same time, we're following a young girl who lives on the island. She has a flying coat, which I think is great. I would love a flying coat, although I'd constantly get worried about ruining it in some way, shape or form, which she is also worried about, so it's relatable. And their two stories come together. I'm so excited for this adventure. It's going to be magical. We have a load of creatures already introduced. I'm about 50 pages into this one already. The setting is fantastic. It's absolutely beautiful. Look at the cover, the edges, there's a little ribbon bookmark. We have a map inside, which I'm definitely going to be referring back to because there is a lot going on here. There's also a couple of pages at the start of all of the different mythical creatures, who they all are. I am definitely already referencing back to this a lot. I'm very excited to go on this journey, and I've heard so many good things about this, so it sounds very well deserving of the Book of the Year award, and I can already tell I'm gonna love it. The other book, In Memoriam, is definitely out of my reading comfort zone. It's a historical wartime novel, not something I would ever really usually pick up unless there was a kind of fantasy element entwined in there. This one doesn't have a fantasy element, but it does have a forbidden LGBT romance, which is kind of more what I'm focusing on for this and is more where the intrigue sits for me. This is set during World War I and is initially set in a boarding school in the English countryside, where we're following Henry Gaunt and Sydney Elwood, who both have crushes on each other, I think. I think they're both infatuated and in love with each other without realising that they're both in love with each other. And then Gaunt ends up enlisting in the British Army to protect his family from the anti-German attacks because his mum is German. This then results in Elwood following him to the battlefield and their moments that they get to find with each other whilst being alongside all of their friends who are dying and this horrible, horrific war. The line at the bottom says, an epic tale of both devastating tragedies of war and forbidden romance that blooms in its grip. In Memoriam is a breathtaking debut. I mean, it sounds like it's going to be absolutely beautiful, and I think this is why I like doing videos like this, because I want to be pushed outside of my reading comfort zone, and I want to read things that expand my reading taste, because that's how I find new favourites and new genres that I enjoy. So these are the two books I'm going to be reading in this video, starting with Impossible Creatures, because I already made a dent into that last night, and I'm just excited to keep going. We're at Greenwich, which is very pretty, and the lighting is perfect, but we keep seeing people with Waterstones bags.
Where are they? Where's the book? Where's
the books? I haven't given you a reading update on either of these in a hot minute, so we're going to do that. I am about to spend the whole day sprinting with my patrons. It is Sunday and we have an all-day live show. I do these quite regularly if you ever want to join. There is a link down below. All tiers, £1. You can join all of the all-day live shows I do, and then I also do weekly live shows for the Hobbiton tier, which are weekly. But you can join those as well. Obviously, if you're in the Hobbiton tier. I didn't say that very well. All tiers can join the readathons. The Hobbiton tier upwards gets access to the weekly live shows. The readathons are more like once a month or so. Anyway, reading updates. Yay! Okay, I'm about halfway through, or just over, maybe halfway through Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundell. This is the book I'm going to be focusing on finishing today. I'm quite enjoying this one. The fantasy element feels really familiar in terms of like stories of my childhood and that kind of element of finding this magical world that you never knew existed. I love that we've kind of got these tie-ins with so many familiar fantasy stories in terms of like, there is something over there that you shouldn't really go and discover, but you're going to go defy the person that told you not to discover it and go and discover it anyway. And I really like that throughout this. And the adventure just feels so traditionally adventurous at the same time as still feeling really fun and new. I really like the cast of characters that we picked up along the way. The main character is very inquisitive as to this whole new world that he's discovered around him because he's just found out that there's this whole fantasy land, but it kind of isn't that shocking to him. It seems like he's always had this affiliation and connection with animals, and it kind of makes sense to him once he discovers this world why he's had that, and we see little bits of that come into it as well. There's the flying coat that's explored a little bit more, which I really want a flying coat. Like, that would be so cool, but I think you'd have to be really careful with it. Like, the idea of actually being able to fly is great, but the reality of it is, one, how high can you go? Like, are aeroplanes a risk? Two, are birds gonna just come up to you and attack you? And three, where are you gonna fly? Because if people see someone flying around, they're gonna have questions. There's gonna be newspapers and media and stuff all around you. So I feel like the idea of it is better than the reality, but in this book, it works because of the kind of land they're living in. It's cool. No one's really that shocked that someone's flying around. The whole point of this land is that it has all the things that we think are like myths and legends are real, and they're there, all the creatures, some of the stories. And I really like the parallels between the stories that we have, that we know, like the story of Icarus is mentioned in this, which we know as being like Icarus flies too close to the sun, his wings melt, he falls and dies. Does he die? I think he dies. Whereas in this, it's a slightly different story, but it's still kind of got similar morals to it, which I really like. And then seeing all the different mythical creatures be there and be real is really fun. And they are really in here. Like, you don't just meet one or two. Like, we have met so many and so many different types of people as well within this. It's really good fun. I'm really enjoying it. It just feels like a great adventure, which is exactly what I wanted. On the other end of the spectrum, we have In Memoriam by Alice Wynne. So I started this yesterday as an audiobook. I'm not actually sure where I'm up to. I think maybe around here. We're gonna go maybe about 100 pages in. This is so heartbreaking. We are instantly thrown into the relationship, which is initially displayed as a friendship, but there's a bit more going on there between our two main characters. Now, I will say the blurb kind of made me feel like they were unaware of each other's affections towards each other, but everything they do screams that they're not unaware of it, but maybe just it's kind of quite unspoken and they really feel like they can't speak about their affections towards each other. But I kind of was led to believe that they didn't really know how the other felt. However, I feel like they do. They must do from some of the stuff they're doing. Like, there were scenes when they were pillow fighting, and then they had like their faces really close to each other, and they had like a moment where I was like, kiss, kiss. I mean, they didn't, but things like that, I'm like, come on, they must realise that they like each other, and I really hope they do realise that. But it's a bit more complicated than that, and there's a lot more going on with those consequences if they do admit that they like each other. But also we've got the whole story of World War I going on here, and this is initially talking about the pressure of enlisting. So we're following these students who are not old enough to enlist yet, but they're lying about their ages, and they're seeing their friends lie about their ages and go off to fight, and by like a year or two they're 18 and they need to be 19, and going off to fight and then potentially not coming back and dying whilst they're in battle. And we're following firstly our main character who goes off to fight because he has pressure from his mum to make them look more patriotic, because his mum is German and they're getting quite a lot of pressure put on them there to make sure that they look patriotic to England. So he goes and fights for that reason, and then his friend is left behind and ends up going along as well because he can't bear the thought of like seeing all this happen without being involved in it himself, whereas his mum doesn't want him to go. So we've got like kind of two different parallels going on with it. And just the way it speaks about the front line and the loss and the grief and the fear mixed with this kind of longing for each other. Initially these two characters are corresponding to each other via letters, and we're seeing a lot around the in memoriam section in the papers being read at the start of this book and throughout as well, and that fear of seeing someone you know in the paper and knowing that they've passed away whilst in battle. And it just captures that sense of that desolation and that sadness and that complete horrible period of history that just was so all-consuming for everybody in so many different ways, and how it affected everyone. And I think it just has done a really beautiful job of creating that atmosphere and making it feel like it's very dark and very sad and very like without hope in places, but in other places giving it that relief of these two characters and how they feel about each other and the kind of the joy that they can bring each other as two people. And I think that it is balancing those two things really well. I mean, it's a lot more nuanced than that, and there's a lot more to it than that, but like as a general overview, that's kind of my thoughts towards it so far, and I'm enjoying it a lot more than I thought I would. Enjoying seems like the wrong word for something like this because it's incredibly sad, but it's definitely not the kind of thing I would normally pick up. I don't tend to lean towards historical war fiction, which I think I've said before, so this is definitely out of my reading comfort zone, but that is why I like these kind of videos, because they push me out of my reading comfort zone and I end up finding something that is really beautiful, is making me feel a lot of different things, and something I probably wouldn't have picked up if it weren't for filming this video. So those are my two thoughts at the moment on both of these. As I said, I'm going to try and finish Impossible Creatures today, which I don't think should be too difficult because I'm over halfway through. The chapters are super short, the writing reads super fast, and it's a fun time. So I'm going to hopefully finish this one today and listen to a little bit more of In Memoriam a little bit later once I've finished Impossible Creatures. I have finished both Impossible Creatures and In Memoriam. Impossible Creatures was a really fun middle grade. I like when middle grade isn't afraid to be a little darker in places and a little sadder. I think for me that has the biggest impact, and this definitely did that. So I really like that it had those moments. I love the adventure that we went on. At times it was a little jittery and narrative to follow, I will say. Like, it felt like you're kind of being thrown about different moments in the plot, and sometimes you feel surprised at maybe where you've ended up. But other than that, I really enjoyed it. I really liked the characters. It had a lot of heart to it. I liked the kind of crew element of people coming together to help solve this mystery of what was happening in this magical land, and kind of opening it up to what I assume is a series. I assume there's going to be more books. The way it ended makes me think that. I don't know, but I'm assuming. I really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I just finished listening to In Memoriam. This audiobook, I mean, I've spoken about this already, and wow, this was a powerful book. I really felt a lot of emotions whilst reading this. There's a lot of sadness mixed with a lot of feelings of like desperate hope and a want for these two to be able to find each other in this book. The way that this audiobook captures this story is really unique. I actually don't know how this comes across in the physical read, but in the audiobook you occasionally are read in memoriam sections of people that have passed away. I'm trying to see if I can find a bit in the physical book, but you basically, as an audiobook, it comes through, like, different names are coming through each headphone if you're listening with headphones on, and it kind of basically ends up sounding really overwhelming. Like, there's so many names coming at you from different sides of the headphones, and I think that was so clever because it just captured that complete sense of loss and that overwhelming feeling of how many people were lost. And I think that it captured that in a really beautiful way through that form of storytelling. So I would highly recommend the audiobook for this. I feel like it made this story be told in a very different way, and I really felt like that was very powerfully done. At the heart of this is a romance between these two men who know that they can't be together and know that there are so many consequences towards wanting to be together, and that story is incredibly powerful and also incredibly sad, alongside the fact that we have World War One and the shock and the trauma and everything that's happening with that. And I think the blending of those two things was just so powerful. There's just so much emotion in this book, and the way that it captures that is just, I think, was done in such a brilliant way, and such a scary way as well, like talking about the war and the kind of capturing the feelings of people before they go and wanting to enlist and being kind of almost excited to enlist and feeling like it's what they need to do for their country. And then once they enlist, and the immediate fear and the terror and how horrible it is and how scary and intense and just awful it was. And then coming back home and reflecting on that, and also like the idea of the white feathers and how people viewed people who weren't going to war, just all of these conversations that were had in this book. Not a book, as I have said, that I would have picked up if it wasn't for this video, but a book that I'm glad I did pick up for this video, and a reminder to read out of my comfort zone, because I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. It was very sad, but very fantastic, beautifully written, and I would love to read more by Alice Wynne. This is their debut, yeah, Waterstones debut fiction prize, and this was the novel of the year, whereas, hang on, this is the book of the year. Both fantastic, great picks for this video. Different genres for sure, but both had a lot of heart and both made me feel many emotions. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed seeing me read the Waterstones prize winners for 2023. I'm already excited to see what the prize winners for 2024 are. I like doing this because it kind of takes my reading choice out of my hands for this video, and I find that quite good fun. So I hope you enjoyed watching. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.